Marco Forgione, thank you for talking to JoyNews. International trade is under threat. The experts say that we're facing a double tragedy, but I like to call it a triple tragedy, simply because of the trend. First there was COVID, then we moved into the effects of the Russian-Ukraine war, and now there's the imminent threat of what's happening in the Middle East. Do you agree with the assessment that that's what's happening to international trade now?
Blessed, that is a fantastic analysis of where we are. You know, I was born in the 1960s, and as I look back over my lifetime, you know, most of it has spent believing that tomorrow was going to be better than yesterday, that the perpetual growth, people getting healthier and wealthier, and trade booming internationally was the norm. It's quite clear that that was the anomaly, and we are now in a period of immense turmoil in international trade. We've had COVID, we've got the issues in the Red Sea, we've got war in mainland Europe, and we've got ecological damage constraining global supply chains around the Panama Canal. So we are in an exceptional time. And on top of that, global geopolitics is at a point of fissure and fracture that hasn't been seen for many generations. The conscious decoupling of the two largest economies, US and China, is massive. And the reality, we are moving into a time of economic nationalism and the weaponization of global supply chains.
And this is where many say that isolationism is, you know, triumphing over what it is that multilateral trade regimes have brought to the world. What do you feel nations should be turning much more towards? Within their markets, or still having hopes that the international markets will be opened up once again?
So I don't think globalization is dead.
Right.
I think what we're moving into is a new era of a different type of globalization and a restructuring of traditional relationships and partnerships. As I've said, you know, what's happening between the US and China is going to continue for many years to come. Where that ends, you know, I'm not going to, I'm not a fortune teller. But what I do believe is that we are seeing a massive restructure and realignment of supply chain and trading partnerships. And I think what's happening with the UK, having exited from the EU, is in microcosm what's happening globally. But there is nothing that is all bad or all downside, because what this is doing is creating new opportunities. And if we look at the potential that the AFCFTA, the Continental Free Trade Agreement, can deliver for Africa, if you look at what the potential for Southern and Western Africa is as a result of the global instability around the Red Sea, I see massive potential, huge potential, but it has to be based on a free trading arrangement that is standards-based, legally based, and compliant with international laws. And if we can establish that, then I think, sat here in Ghana, the potential is vast, and that Ghana, through some of it luck of geography, some of it due to the fact that it is a stable country with great entrepreneurs, can be at the very heart of the next iteration of global trade.
But Africa has got to be cautious, isn't it? You know, banging our hopes on this continental free trade area. It's off to a slow start, isn't it? We are using a guided trade initiative, 8 countries trading in all, ever since the start of this ambitious market, you know, that the continent is seeking to create. Intra-Africa trade hovering, you know, around less than 15%. The challenges are still there. We've got to be cautious, isn't it?
No, I think we have to be realistic. So we need to understand that there are challenges and difficulties in trying to get, you know, the 50 nations of Africa to collaborate when they are so very different. You know, from north to south, east to west, centre. The nations are very, very different heritages. But the ambition that's been enunciated, and the fact that so much actually has been achieved in such a short time, I think is to be applauded. Is there more to do? Yes. Are there great challenges? Yes. But just because things are difficult doesn't mean that they shouldn't be done. You look at how long it took for Europe to collaborate and form a trading union. You know, you are in very early stages, but you have achieved more than in the first few years of the EU agenda. But there, you know, we have to be realistic. There are problems and challenges, and it will take a great deal of determination, and it will take a great deal of relationship building and trust But if Africa can do that, genuinely, we will see a revitalization, a renaissance of Africa, and a renaissance for the global economy, unlike anything we've been
But that's where
before.
we need your expertise, isn't it? You run an institute that, of course, deals with international trade. What's your personal diagnosis of, the trade regime, and how can we improve the Africa Continental Free Trade Area?
It has to move away from economic nationalism. You have to move away from protectionism. You have to build based on trust and integration. So you have to encourage businesses to trade with each other. You have to encourage businesses to trade cross borders. You have to provide the infrastructure, that's physical infrastructure and technical infrastructure, to enable that. You have to encourage a free trade approach. And if you can do that, if you can provide a facilitation, an easement for trade, particularly intra-African trade, it will be huge. To move, as you've said, from 15% intra-African trade to closer to 40%, it should be an initial target, but I think you should be looking at 60, 70% for intra-African trade. Just think what that will do. You will move the value add that it's currently taken by everyone else, so you extract the commodities here and they are shipped abroad to be processed and the value add. If you can do intra-African trade, the processing comes to Africa and the African nations benefit from that processing and that value add.
What role do you feel, already grown or emerged markets should be doing in helping perhaps this framework to blossom? Ghana and other African markets are now emerging, so the concern is that there is definitely a need at some point to bring in industrialized nations and to have them support the framework. What sort of support should we be looking up to from the West, from the East, or from wherever the help may be coming from?
And Africa has potential to draw from all of them, from the US, from Europe, and from China and Asia. I don't think you should be shy about that, and we should encourage a framework of foreign direct investment, because if you have that direct investment, what that does is it transforms the local economy, and that drives up productivity, which is really important for African-based manufacturing. But you have to do that understanding that the African nations need to be doing that from a position of strength, not of weakness, and that you need to be ensuring that the deals benefit and secure the long-term future of Africa and African businesses. And what I don't think is healthy is selling yourselves or selling Africa capability, selling Africa commodities cheaply because of a short-term benefit. And there is always a thorny problem, but I think it needs to be addressed, and that is about the probably too close link between some forms of politics and some forms of business. And I think that there needs to be a clear separation between the politicians and business, and we need to ensure that corruption is driven out of the system and the processes, because that acts as a massive weight that just prevents growth and prevents entrepreneurship.
The situation is much more dire for countries such as Ghana, isn't it? For some experts, it's as though we're between a rock and a hard place. Our economic figures not really helping, and this is the time where the nation should be turning to its international partners. AFTA is not off to a quick start, so that's off the table now. Our traditional trading routes within the Commonwealth, for instance, is where we should be looking, but the figures are also not good when you look at them, right? 60 billion loss in trade, based on the trade reviews that we're seeing. How can Ghana weather the storm? I mean, looking at this economic challenge that we're facing.
Yeah, though it is a challenging environment, but it's a challenging environment globally. If you look at the WTO statistics, global trade is going to slow down over the coming years. So the world is in a difficult place at the moment, and the global economy itself is in a challenging environment. If you need only look at what's happening in Germany, the Netherlands, Spain and Italy currently to see that this is not just an Africa problem, this is an international problem. However, what Ghana has to do is to take a very determined sense that we will be innovative and we will seize opportunities. Now, I was talking about the realignment of global supply chains. Right. Now, I see Ghana having the potential to replace some of the traditional industries and manufacturing that takes place in Asia. So Bangladesh currently have problems with their ready-made garments, getting them into their key market, into the EU particularly, because of what's happening in Suez. Well, Ghana has a brilliant fabric sector, fabric industry. Now, invest in quickly in ready-made garment production, and you're not constrained by the Red Sea. You're not constrained by Panama, so you can get your products into market really quickly. Standards will be important, traceability and tracking of the products, and making sure that you can assure them. But if you can do that, that's a vast potential for Ghana. Then you've got the natural resources and capability with cocoa, and trying to get cocoa refining cocoa production moved back into Ghana rather than selling the commodity overseas.
But we'll have to leapfrog, and one game changer will be the introduction of technology. The government has been very, huge on its digitalization agenda. Do you see that as part of the solution?
Oh yes, digitalization is the future of international trade. We did a report recently of the impact of digitalization on the UK economy. So the UK economy is obviously a more advanced economy, more refined economy. So the benefits of digitalization will be less in the UK than would be in Ghana. But the digitalization of trade in the UK would, if you did nothing else, if you just did the same things today but you used digital systems, would provide an additional boost of 1% of GDP to the UK economy, something like £25 billion from doing nothing else.
Right.
Imagine what that transformation could do for Ghana. And there are advantages that Ghana has. You're not constrained by a bunch of legacy systems. You can move straight to mobile. You can move to the more progressive, advanced technological solutions which are coming into the marketplace as of today.
Let's speak about the UK, since you're, talking about the UK. We have historical ties, obviously, and the feeling is that should be one of the markets where, of course, Ghanaian produce, in terms of agriculture and other products, should be finding, some entry, sort of. There's a new policy coming through the border targeting policy. The fear is that countries such as Ghana and other African nations might be affected some way, somehow, because of the phytosanitary regulations now coming through on that policy. Should African markets or perhaps Ghanaian products be worried that this new policy, which is coming into force, might, affect some of their trading routes?
No, it's a huge opportunity. And it's a huge opportunity because the changes that the UK is implementing with regards to the way its border operates is to make them digital, make them more seamless, but also to take a risk-based approach rather than a hazard-based approach. So a lot of products from Africa have faced a real challenge selling into the UK because of the hazards-based approach. By taking a risk-based approach, so by analysing the production, the area of production, the type of product, and the security and assurance that sits around those products, actually Ghana has the potential, by meeting standards, to get easier access into the UK.
The standards is the problem.
The standards are essential.
Right.
If you're not producing standards, you're not going to be able to sell your goods anywhere. The period whereby any nation is prepared to accept hazard into across their borders is gone. So if Ghana can get producers producing to the standards, and that's about education and training. It's something that the Institute takes to heart. Right. This is why we were founded in 1935. Right. So it's relatively simple to do. It takes some commitment.
A lower industrialized nation like Ghana, definitely there will be challenges, packaging-wise, and whatever considerations.
But there's help. There is help there. There is help and support. We're here to provide help and support. There are international agencies that are keen to help and support. And if you look at, I'm going to take a microcosm of the EU. Right now, through the weaponization of supply chains and trade routes, farmers in France are barricading their routes to prevent goods getting through. The same is happening in Germany, it's happening in Spain, it's happening in the Netherlands. So supply chains are disrupted. Ghana has the potential, with what the UK is doing with its target operating model, to achieve the standards of production and get their products into market better, quicker, and grow the potential. Also, if you can do that, you can start also to shift some of that processing back to Ghana and create the value add. Look, it's not simple. It sounds simple for me to sit here and say this. But do nothing and you will go backwards. That's the guarantee. Do nothing, you go backwards.
Well, at least we're trying something, and of course I'm happy that your institute is also coming through. Your partnering, for instance, with the Ghana Export Promotion Authority. What programs are you running with them, and how will that perhaps help the situation for us to get out of the challenge?
Brilliant. So we're working with JEPA, the Ghana Export Promotions Agency, to support around capacity building, knowledge and expertise around customs and international trade. This is the bedrock of what the Institute does. We help professionalise international trade so that people understand how the systems work, what they can do to comply, and what standards are required in their manufacturing. So we give practical help and support. But I'm not satisfied that us just working with JEPA is going to solve the problem. I'm very keen to expand that, to work with the banks, to support them in understanding how maybe they can use microfinancing and more accessible financing to support MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises. We work with the WTO to support female-led businesses, female entrepreneurs in the developing world. So we are absolutely committed to helping and supporting. And there are many others who are active in supporting and providing the funding to develop that transformation. Not all of it is entirely non-self-interest, because, as I've said, the world realizes that the way food is produced currently, the way that commodities are transited, the way that consumer goods are built is changing. Right. And so we need that resilience, and Ghana has the potential to be part of that transformation.
For how long do you intend to run this policy or program?
Me?
With GIP?
I am committed to being here for as long as possible. My long-term dream is that the Institute is no longer needed, because every community, every business knows how to trade internationally, that the policies exist for global free trade. Unfortunately, I think we're going to be around for a much, much longer period of time, but we are committed. We're committed both to Africa and we are committed to Ghana.
But trade, as we know, it thrives on strong institutions. Unfortunately, in our part of the world, the West Africa sub-region, it's not been all that smooth, is it? Looking at what's happening on the Gulf, and also the governance weakness that we're experiencing across the West Africa sub-region. Let's start off from your concerns, security concerns on the Gulf of Guinea, and the fact that there are increasing cases of piracy, as of course being reported. Is that of a worry to you, and could that cripple the entire sector that we have here?
It's a huge cause of concern. Anything that disrupts, anything that is illegal, that disrupts the flow of international trade is a bad thing. As I've said many times before, businesses which trade internationally, businesses which trade cross borders, are more sustainable, more resilient, employ more people, are more innovative, and are more profitable. So anything that disrupts that is bad for business, bad for communities, bad for nations. So we have to stop it. And unfortunately, with the problems that are happening in the Red Sea, where we're also seeing an upturn in piracy again off the coast of Somalia, is sending much more of the global shipping to come around up along the west coast, and that is obviously now creating a bigger target for pirates off the Gulf. They have to be stopped. And so action will need to be taken to prevent that, because they're not just damaging global international trade. They're not just maybe for a few £1 million thinking that they're going to make themselves better off. They are fundamentally undermining the potential of Africa.
And I guess there are implications for us in terms of our economy.
For every economy across Africa, where there is piracy, where there is corruption, where there is bad business practice, that is not something that should be tolerated. It is a huge counterweight that prevents growth, that limits potential.
The issue about governance and the increase in unconstitutional changes in government that we're experiencing in the West Africa sub-region, some might feel it's a remote factor, but it has a direct bearing on international trade. How can West Africa build stronger institutions to stand the test of time, and to ensure that investments that come into this part of the world are indeed secure?
I think the very last thing that West Africa needs, or Africa needs, is someone from the UK coming over and telling you how to solve what are the particular issues that exist within Africa. I think everyone here knows what needs to be done. It's a case of getting on and doing it, because anything that acts as a constraint and prevents growth, limits human endeavour, limits the potential for future wealth and prosperity, and to tackle, as I've said, those key issues that humanity faces, whether that's the environment, health, education, or economic deprivation. So I will leave Africa to solve Africa's problems, but you'll know what needs to be done. It's a case of making sure that that gets done.
Okay, I thought that would have been the last one, but we can't go without talking about gender, which should be of concern to us. Ghana's economy, largely informal, and the people you find in that sector are women. But when you come to the international level, it's not entirely the same. Looking at the demographics, how can we promote more women? Support more women to come to the fore and to be, at the forefront of international trade.
It's a big problem, and it's not just a big problem here. Even in the UK, there's a disparity between access to international trade based on gender. And men get a better deal out of it. So we work hard with the WTO on something called the She Trades Initiative, which is specifically targeting female-led businesses, entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, to help them, because they excluded from trade finance. They're excluded from the global supply chain, from the logistics and transport sector. So we try and provide them with the help and support that they need. And there are brilliant examples of what female entrepreneurs are able to do.
Right.
And the benefit, so any business that trades internationally, trades cross borders, as I've said, more sustainable, more resilient, employs more people, more innovative, and more profitable. But you get a female-led business trading internationally, and you don't just transform that business or that family, you transform the entire community because of the role that women on the whole play within their community, within their society. So there's a real imperative that we build the capacity, the knowledge, and give access to the key requirements of international trade to female-led businesses. So we are actively supporting those initiatives, and anything that can be done that provides that help and support, particularly to the informal business sector, to give that support to those business sectors, to those women, will make a huge benefit, huge difference to entire communities.
Marco, I want us to wrap up, and we'll wrap up by talking about the WTO, because that's the framework allowing for countries to trade internationally. Just as there are calls for reforms to the United Nations system, same is happening to the WTO. Do you feel that, Africa's case should be heard at this point in terms of inclusion and having more representation?
Yes, and brilliantly, Dr. Ngozi is a forceful voice for women and for African women and for Africa at the WTO. And I think she has been a brilliant leader of the WTO. The WTO does have its problems, and we've got Ministerial Conference number 13 coming up at the end of February, and I know that there are some difficult challenges and difficult discussions that are going to be had at the Ministerial Conference. But if the WTO didn't exist, we would need to create it. So I think we may need to reform it, but absolutely it's the right institution.
Marco, I'm wishing you all the best for your engagements later this week.
Thank you, Blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you.